Well, good morning once again. This is the Doctor of Digital podcast. The purpose of the show is to transform your business and life with education and inspiration. I introduce busy business leaders to trends in business, technology, and marketing to highlight people you should know. What does it take to revolutionize the way we approach healthcare? For Dr. Katherine Evans, a renowned expert in specialty value-based care, the answer lies in innovative clinical models that prioritize patient outcomes while reducing costs. As a developer and implementer of the value-based care clinical model for Novocardia, Dr. Evans has spent years working with interdisciplinary teams to transform the landscape of clinical care in cardiology. But what drives her passion for value-based care, and what can we learn from her groundbreaking work? With over a decade of experience in cardiology, Dr. Evans has built a reputation as a leading expert in value-based care. Her extensive experience and background in academic medicine, private practice, and healthcare consulting has equipped her with a unique understanding of the complexities of cardiology care. As a recognized expert in value-based care, Dr. Evans has developed and implemented clinical models for various organizations, including Novocardia. Her expertise in cardiology is matched only by her commitment to collaboration, having worked closely with clinicians, administrators, and other stakeholders to develop and implement value-based care clinical models. With a track record of publishing numerous articles and presenting at conferences on cardiology-related topics, Dr. Evans is a sought-after speaker and thought leader in her field. During this episode, we'll do a deep dive into the changes and hot topics of cardiology, including its biggest challenges and growth. I will leverage the expertise of my guest and how to navigate the unique dynamics of the field. By the end of this episode, you'll be better equipped to know what to do, and I encourage you to contact my guest. Meet Katherine Evans, renowned cardiologist. With that, I'd like to welcome Katherine to the program. How are you today?
I am doing well. And I'm not a cardiologist, though. I will have to make sure everyone knows that. I am a nurse practitioner, but I do have a strong background in clinical care and cardiology.
Outstanding. Thank you for clarifying. You know, people are curious, and certainly I am too. What's the pivotal story? How do you get interested in the heart? I mean, I know it's obvious that you got to have a heart, right? But how was it, and what is it about it that attracted you? What's the pivotal story there?
So I think when I started my career, I started taking care of very sick patients in the ICU. And I learned very quickly that the heart is where everything happens in the ICU, right? It's important that things are working well. You're looking a lot at all the different pressures and how things come together. And if you don't take care of your heart and it's not functioning appropriately, then you end up with a lot of issues, chronic conditions, shortness of breath, a lot of things that are really challenging to recover from. So it was something that was appealing to me because there are a lot of things in cardiac care that are preventable. And there's a lot of things we can do to help people to avoid sickness, chronic illness. And there's a lot of good evidence, a lot of good strategies out there. So that was very appealing to me as well, that there's very clear paths and ways to help people.
I see. You know, there's a famous commercial on television that says, "How's your heart?" And it's like, well, yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense, right? Yeah, we all have to be very concerned about it. But there's a lot of things in medicine. So I'm curious. Now, you've been in the field for some time. I'm wondering what you have seen and what are the sort of changes that you'd say over the past, say, decade or so.
So I think we're really seeing a shift toward, instead of kind of a transactional medicine where you go in, you have a problem and you get it treated. It's more of a holistic approach. And that's where we think about value-based care it's looking at different people on the team, providing different types of care, thinking more holistically about patient care. So it's just a very different approach versus saying, I'm going to go in for my checkup once a year and that's it. I think we're seeing also a lot more collaboration among disciplines. So really thinking about how do we collaborate? You know, you go to your specialist, you go to your PCP, but how do all those pieces fit together into one holistic story for a patient? And I also think that we're much, much more focused on quality and outcomes as well. So ensuring that people are getting the preventive care, that their chronic illnesses are managed, and that the quality outcomes are excellent for each patient.
Okay. Are there topics that you would say that maybe the research is showing, or that things that we're aware of, like sort of hot topics? I mean, what should a person be aware of in terms of their heart?
So I think there's a lot of different things happening right now in terms of cardiac care. So one is in the past where we had a lot of open heart surgeries for things like valves and where cardiac catheterizations were done through the groin. Things are becoming less invasive. So, for example, when you have a heart catheterization now, it can be done through your wrist or your elbow. If you need a valve replacement, that can be done without having open heart surgery. We can do that in the cath lab. So there's exciting innovations that are happening there in terms of how we can manage people with irregular heart rhythms. There's a lot of incredible innovation in that management. Additionally, I think we know a lot more about how to keep people healthier without those interventions. So making sure that people are getting their blood pressure really well managed, their cholesterol very well managed, eating that heart healthy diet. So a lot of fruits and vegetables, the lean proteins and whole grains, all those things that really help us to keep our hearts healthy, as well as good exercise and keeping active. So I think what we know is that exercise doesn't have to feel overwhelming in order to have good heart health. It can simply be making sure you're going out for a walk every day. So there's small things that we can do that add up to great heart health.
That's really what I'm very interested in knowing, like kind of recommendations. Like if you look at the general health of the American population, and according to statistics, it's kind of bleak. It doesn't look all that good. And I always tell people, as I'm a historian by training, and I said, look at old pictures. You see people are really kind of thin and they seem very healthy and vibrant. So I'm curious, what kind of recommendations would you make, and what kinds of things could you say for people to be aware of?
I think for starters, it's remaining active, and that can look however that wants to look for a person. So it can be going for a walk every day. It can be going to the gym. It could be going for a swim. It can be working in your garden. It's just making sure that you're not sitting too long and that you're getting up at least every hour, moving around and staying active. That would be one. I think there are small things we can do with our diet. So processed food is what's really become a big issue for us, especially in Western society. So getting away from the things that are in packages and eating more of the whole foods. So fruits and vegetables, things that don't have long ingredient lists. Those are things that are really helpful in terms of heart health. And then avoiding a lot of fat in terms of your protein. So thinking more along the lines of chicken, lean pork, fish versus fattier cuts of meat is another area. And then the whole grains. So brown rice versus white rice, really thinking about keeping those things in moderation. And I would say people don't need to necessarily rehaul everything they're doing at one time, right? I think you can make small changes over time that are sustainable. And I think setting goals is critically important in order to be successful in maintaining it. What we need to think about is lifestyle, not a temporary diet. And how do we make changes that are healthy, that we can live with for the rest of our lives, that are sustainable and make us feel good?
It's one of those things that's almost impossible to say general population, but there are certain things that probably people could do. Now, say sitting is the new smoking, which is expressive, right? Because a lot of people sitting all the time, and here I'm behind a computer and I do podcasting, so I know I got to get up and move around. And this is what I was saying in terms of people who pass. My father worked in a factory. My grandfather was a truck driver. Everybody before them were farmers. And what I noticed about them, of course, is that they're moving, right? They're not sitting in one place. I mean, even truck driver, you got to move around. You got to do things. You move things. So what would you say people should do? And just I've heard minimum 3 times a week, let's say, walk for 20 minutes. It's just not that imposing of a criteria.
Absolutely. I think there are small things you can do. For example, after dinner, take a 10-minute walk around the block. When you get up in the morning after you have your coffee, make sure you walk a little bit and move around. If you normally have coffee with cream, switch it to skim milk and see if you can make small changes like that. If you typically eat, dessert at dinner, think about changing that to fruit instead of dessert. So I think there's a lot of small things that are easily incorporated, and just make one change at a time, I would say. Don't try to make 12 changes at a time, because that's just not sustainable. So really small moves that you're getting your body moving, you're incorporating in more fruits and vegetables. I think as Americans, fruits and vegetables is probably the hardest thing for us to get incorporated in our diet regularly. I know a lot of people struggle with that. So finding those things you like. And then one of the things I think that helps with that as well is preparation, right? So on Sundays, going through your grocery list and then preparing all the food so it's easy to grab it. So if you want to have a celery stick, you're not having to wash and chop all the celery every time, right? So kind of on a Sunday, taking the time to make sure everything's prepped for the week. And so as your week gets super busy and things get rolling, you have everything ready to go.
And it's curious, you had said about there's this holistic approach, and I'm curious, how does the heart interact with other aspects of health and holistically? Could you expand a little bit on that as well?
Sure. So, the heart is a muscle, right? Like any other muscle in our body, we have to take care of it. And the better we take care of it, the more efficient it works, the stronger it gets, and the better health we're in overarchingly. So the heart, if it's pumping well, then we're better able to move well. For example, when somebody has congestive heart failure and their heart doesn't pump well, fluid backs up into their lungs, they have a harder time breathing, they get short of breath, and they can't be as active anymore. You don't get as much blood to your brain, you get more tired. So when your heart is not efficient, it really impacts your entire life, because you lose your energy, you lose your ability to be active, and it kind of creates a spiral where you just end up not wanting to go move. It can affect your mental health as well. So as long as we're keeping our hearts healthy, active, then we are also keeping other parts of our body healthy and active as well.
And that's a interesting question or topic as well, too, because you mentioned mental health. What's the connection between, let's say, generally good heart health and good mental health? What's the connection between those two?
Sure. So there's a lot of great studies showing how exercise really creates endorphins in our body. And those endorphins are what give us that good feeling all the time. So when we're exercising, when we're moving, our heart is pumping better. We create those endorphins. We then have a better mood. We're happier as we're more active. So all of those things fit together nicely in order to feel as though our brains and our hearts and our health is all coming together as one.
And what's the say the interaction between the different parts of the health? So in other words, we've got a respiratory system, we've got my lung system. I mean, how do all those things work together? I think this is one of the most interesting but difficult things to understand about medicine in general and our bodies in general.
Yeah, so if we are not eating a heart healthy diet, what happens is we have plaque building up in our arteries. So then blood can't flow as well, right? So you end up with blockages, whether that's in your heart, in your legs, in your brain. It can really impact everything when you don't have good blood flow throughout your body. So when you have that plaque buildup, which comes from eating a lot of high fat foods, a lot of processed foods, not having a lot of good exercise, it also is there's some genetic impacts as well. So people who have family history of heart disease are more likely to have heart disease as well. So those people who have that history, it's even more important to make sure that you're eating that good heart healthy diet. But if you have those blockages, if your heart's not pumping as well, your lungs aren't functioning as well, so you have a harder time breathing, you have a harder time being active, even just walking up a hill or walking up some stairs can be more of a struggle. You're at risk for what's called vascular dementia, where you don't have enough blood flow to your brain, so you don't get that good brain tissue. You end up with, memory loss and changes with dementia because of the lack of blood flow to the brain and not working as well. And then the same with your extremities. So if you don't have good blood flow to your feet, you can have issues with pain, with not having enough blood flow coming to your feet, not getting that oxygen there can create pain when you walk. So ensuring that we are eating well, keeping exercising, that helps keep that blood flowing to the lower extremities as well. And it can even lead to potential things down the road like amputations or major struggles there because of all those blockages that can happen with those plaques in the arteries.
So I think what you were saying is something I was curious about. A person said, I've noticed some things about my body. I think you're almost referring to. So if a person said, I'm noticing these symptoms, is it an indication that there's something wrong with my heart? So could you just tell those things?
Sure. So sometimes it's insidious. So sometimes you don't, you noticed small changes over time and you think, well, this is just part of getting older. I'm more tired because I'm getting older. Or I noticed that I can't walk as far as I used to walk because, and I just get too tired. And I think sometimes people attribute that to aging, and it's not normal aging. We should not feel more tired. We should not be able to not walk as far as we used to. We should not feel chest pain when we walk or short of breath when we walk. When we should not, when we're walking, have leg pain. That's not normal. So those are all things that could be related to changes in the heart that need to be evaluated. And I would encourage people, if they're not feeling well, to go see their primary care doctor and get checked out. It may not be their heart, it may be something else, but you don't know until you really have that evaluation and you're looked at. And it's important to use your voice and really talk about what's exactly happening with you. Advocate if you feel like you need more help and you're not getting it. Because there are a lot of things that can be brushed off. I think this happens especially with women, where they just think, I'm super busy. You know, I've got my kids and my mom and my job, and it's just a lot, and I'm tired. And it could be something more that could really be evaluated and solved as long as they get the right care.
Interesting. And that's a really valid point, a really interesting point, too. It's not just aging. I can't do things because I'm older. No, fight against that a little bit, right? You should be able to do all those things and keep your heart healthy. So I'm curious then if you could say, here's some actionable tips that a person said, all right, I'd like to be able to get a better heart health and I want to improve. What would you say? What are some actionable tips?
Yeah. So first, I would encourage everyone to make sure you get your annual checkup with your primary care doctor. So ensuring that you go see that person, whoever is your person. If you don't have a person, make sure you find and get established with a primary care provider. I think that is really helpful in order to make sure that you're getting your blood work done, your blood pressure checked, your cholesterol checked. And, everyone should be getting that done once a year just to make sure that those numbers are looking good. Because if they're not, those things are very treatable, and that's a way to keep your heart healthy. I think too, really look at your diet. Think about, take the inventory over, call it 3 days, and write everything down. See how many servings of fruits and vegetables you're getting in those days. If it's 1 or 2, that's not enough, right? The goal is to get to 5. So add in a fruit or a vegetable once a day over the course of several weeks, right? So it doesn't have to be overnight, but set a goal and think about that. Look at your activity. How much are you getting up and walking? If you need to get a tracker so you can look at that, that's helpful too. Everybody's Apple Watches and iPhones will help with that as well. And look and see, maybe add 500 steps a day. So make it in small increments and think about ways you can get more active. And it doesn't need to be 30 minutes in a slot. You can do 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon, 5 minutes in the evening. So make it things that are doable, easily achievable for you, and that work with your lifestyle. And then engage your friends and family. I think it's helpful when you are surrounded by people who are also living a healthy heart lifestyle. And think about that support system that can help you as you're trying to achieve your new goals as well.
Got it. Very interesting. Now, we've talked about a number of things, changes, hot topics, how the heart interacts with everything else, and some tips are really helpful. I'm curious then, if a person has heard you, how do they get a hold of you? Do you have maybe provide some contact information?
Sure. So you can find me on X at K. Abraham Evans. You can find me on LinkedIn at Katherine Abraham Evans as well. And then you can find our organization, Novocardia and Cardiovascular Associates of America at cvausa.com.
Well, thank you very much. It's a wealth of knowledge, and everyone needs to pay attention to their hearts. So really appreciate you taking some time and sharing some of your expertise with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. So Dr. Evans was a great guest, got a lot of healthy tips, and we all want to have a good and healthy heart. So if you like this episode, of course, what I'm hoping you do as well is that you're sharing on social media, positively review the Dr. Digital podcast. And of course, I want to thank the supporters of the program, and that is the publishers of both Burning America and also On Track, Ian Hunter, for their continued support. And if you want to know more about what I do, I am the Idea to Author Coach. I guide your journey from draft to shelf. I help business leaders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs break through their obscurity through written presentations, building credibility and authority. That's the Idea to Author Coach. And you can join me on Facebook, help other people as well. If you've got an idea and you want to write a book, I can help you. Until next time, this is the Dr. Digital signing off. Deus Vult.